Picture yourself huddled in a Norse longhouse, circa 900 CE, the air thick with the scent of woodsmoke, wool, and the faint whiff of a Viking's unwashed beard. The winter wind howls outside, rattling the timbers, and you're pulling your furs tight, hoping the fire lasts till dawn. Viking winter nights in Scandinavia were long, dark, and cold, filled with rituals, stories, and a touch of "is that a draugr at the door?" From Norway's fjords to Sweden's snowy fields, these nights were a mix of cozy survival and superstitious dread, as detailed in sagas like Njál's Saga and archaeological finds from Birka. We're not here to summon frost giants. Leave that to the skalds, but to chuckle at their wintry antics, wrapped in the hum of a crackling hearth. So fluff your imaginary bearskin, ignore the distant creak of ice, and let the rustle of furs, the flicker of flames, and their quiet secrets lull you into a cozy, amused snooze. We're diving into 10 secrets of Viking winter nights, each a peek into the warm, wary world of Norse households. From smoky longhouses to frozen farmsteads, we'll wander through their nighttime habits, savoring the scent of pine, the clink of mead horns, and the sheer audacity of warding off spirits with a well-timed tale. These rituals were a blend of survival, superstition, and hope the fire doesn't die. Grab a mental mug of mead, settle in, and let's giggle our way through the quiet secrets of Viking winter nights, each one a sleepy, snarky gem. Imagine curling up in a Norwegian longhouse, 850 CE, the air heavy with the scent of pine, smoke, and the faint whiff of a damp sheepskin. You're poking the hearth fire before bed, praying it doesn't fizzle out in the freezing night. The air's buzzing with the crackle of logs, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of more wood. The poetic Edda hints at the hearth's sacred role, with fires tended to ward off winter's bite. Let's slip into this smoky warmth, letting the flicker of flames, the whiff of ash, and their fire-tending fuss make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Fires, per Norse tradition, were the heart of winter survival, keeping longhouses warm and spirits at bay. A dying fire could mean frostbite or worse, the air thick with the drone of crackling logs and the smell of resin. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this fire lasts till dawn." Tending it was a nightly ritual, the air tense with the rustle of wood and the hope of warmth. Life around this was cozy but anxious. Longhouses hummed with fire talk, the air heavy with the clink of axes splitting logs and the scent of smoke. Families, stacking wood, grumbled about the cold, their voices low, the air warm with the crackle of flames and the effort of stoking them. Neighbors, sharing mead, whispered about that weak hearth, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of "keep it burning." The community loved the ritual, snickering over bread about a fire's early fizzle, the air thick with fumes, and the kind of laughter you get when warmth's a chore. Fires were a lifeline, and as the hearth fades, let's shift to door wards, where spirits got blocked. Picture yourself in a Swedish farmstead, 950 CE, the air heavy with the scent of wood, wax, and the faint whiff of a Viking's sweaty boots. You're carving a rune on the door frame before bed, hoping it keeps those pesky undead from creeping in. The air's buzzing with the clink of chisels, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of no ghosts tonight. Sagas like Grettir's Saga mention runes and charms to ward off spirits in winter. Let's saunter into this spooky precaution, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of pine, and their ghostly fears make you snicker as you sink toward slumber. Runes, per Norse beliefs, held power to block evil, with symbols like alges carved at night. A weak ward might invite a draugr, the air thick with the drone of chants and the smell of wax. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this rune stops that zombie." Doors were sealed with care, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of a safe night. Life around this was eerie. Farmsteads hummed with ward carving, the air heavy with the clink of tools and the scent of wood. Elders etching runes warned of spirits, their voices grim, the air warm with the chant of prayers and the effort of banishing draugr. Neighbors sharing mead whispered about that haunted door, the air thick with the smell of bread and the murmur of carve it right. The community loved the ritual, snickering over stew about a rune's bad scratch, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when ghosts are at the door. Wards were a must, and as the farmstead fades, let's shift to storytelling, where tales got tall. Imagine sprawling by a Danish Longhouse fire, 900 CE, the air heavy with the scent of mead, smoke, and the faint whiff of a skald's damp cloak. You're listening to tales of Thor and trolls, hoping the stories keep nightmares away. The air's buzzing with the strum of a lyre, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of another tale. The poetic Edda shows skalds reciting myths to entertain and soothe on winter nights. Let's dive into this narrative glow, letting the flicker of flames, the whiff of ale, and their epic yarns make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Storytelling per Sagas was a winter bedtime ritual, with tales of gods and heroes calming restless minds. A dull skald could bore the hall, the air thick with the drone of verses and the smell of mead. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this tale's not too long." Stories were a shield against the dark, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of a good yarn. Life around this was lively. Longhouses hummed with skaldic chants, the air heavy with the clink of horns and the scent of smoke. Skalds reciting myths grumbled about hecklers, their voices loud, the air warm with the strum of strings and the effort of captivating listeners. Families sharing bread whispered about that boring tale, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of "Tell a good one." The community loved the stories, snickering over mead about a skald's flubbed verse, the air thick with fumes, and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a saga. Tales were a comfort, and as the fire fades, let's shift to mead drinking, where cups got heavy. Picture yourself in an Icelandic hall, 1000 CE, the air heavy with the scent of honey, smoke, and the faint whiff of a Viking's spilled mead. You're raising a horn to Odin before bed, hoping the toast ensures a safe night. The air's buzzing with the clink of horns, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of skall. The Heimskringla notes mead toasts as nightly rituals to honor gods and ancestors. Let's wander into this boozy sanctity, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of honey, and their tipsy toasts make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Mead toasts per Norse texts blessed the night with sips offered to Thor or Freya. A bad pour could offend the gods, the air thick with the drone of cheers and the smell of honey. You'd probably mutter, "Hope Odin likes this mead." Toasting was a ritual, the air tense with the clink of horns and the hope of divine favor. Life around this was merry. Halls hummed with toasting, the air heavy with the clink of cups and the scent of mead. Elders leading toasts grumbled about weak brews, their voices loud, the air warm with the rustle of furs and the effort of pleasing gods. Families sharing bread whispered about that bad toast. The air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of pour it right. The community loved the ritual, snickering over ale about a Viking's spilled horn. The air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a toast. Mead was a joy, and as the hall fades, let's shift to bed prep, where furs got fussy. Imagine huddling in a Norwegian longhouse, 800 CE, the air heavy with the scent of wool, pine, and the faint whiff of a bearskin's musty odor. You're piling furs on a bench, hoping to avoid fleas and stay warm till dawn. The air's buzzing with the rustle of pelts, the clink of wooden frames, and the murmur of too cold. Archaeological finds from Oseberg show Vikings slept on fur-lined benches. Let's slip into this furry fuss, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of wool, and their bedding grumbles make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Beds, per archaeological evidence, were benches piled with furs or straw, often shared with bugs. A thin pile could mean a chilly night, the air thick with the drone of complaints and the smell of pelts. You'd probably mutter, "Hope these furs aren't flea-ridden." Bed prep was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of hides and the hope of warmth. Life around this was cozy but itchy. Longhouses hummed with bedding talk, the air heavy with the clink of benches and the scent of wool. Families fluffing furs grumbled about cold, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of pelts and the effort of settling in. Neighbors sharing mead whispered about that lousy bed, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of add more furs. The community tolerated the fleas snickering over bread about a Viking's itchy night, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a pelt. Beds were a chore, and as the longhouse fades, let's shift to prayers, where gods got nightly chats. Picture yourself in a Danish farmstead, 950 CE, the air heavy with the scent of wax, smoke, and the faint whiff of a Viking's damp cloak. You're muttering a prayer to Thor before bed, hoping his hammer keeps trolls away. The air's buzzing with the clink of amulets, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of protect us. The poetic Edda mentions prayers to gods like Thor for nighttime safety. Let's dive into this pious vigil, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of wax, and their divine pleas make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Prayers per Norse texts sought protection from gods, with Thor or Freyr invoked at night. A skipped prayer might invite mischief, the air thick with the drone of chants and the smell of wax. You'd probably mutter, "Hope Thor's listening." Bedtime was holy time, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of divine favor. Life around this was devout. Farmsteads hummed with prayer talk, the air heavy with the clink of charms and the scent of smoke. Elders leading chants grumbled about spirits, their voices low, the air warm with the chant of hymns and the effort of pleasing gods. Families sharing bread whispered about that bad prayer, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of don't skip it. The community loved the ritual, snickering over mead about a Viking's weak chant, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a prayer. Prayers were a duty, and as the farmstead fades, let's shift to food prep, where stew got simmering. Imagine sprawling by a Swedish longhouse fire, 900 CE, the air heavy with the scent of barley, herbs, and the faint whiff of a cook's burnt bread. You're stirring a pot of stew before bed, hoping it lasts through the winter night. The air's buzzing with the clink of spoons, the rustle of sacks, and the murmur of not too watery. Archaeological finds from Hadebe show Vikings cooking hearty meals at night. Let's wander into this savory fuss, letting the flicker of flames, the whiff of stew, and their hungry grumbles make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Stew, per archaeological evidence, was a nightly staple, with barley or fish simmering for warmth and strength. A bad pot could mean hunger, the air thick with the drone of stirring and the smell of herbs. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this stew's edible." Cooking was a ritual, the air tense with the clink of pots and the hope of a full belly. Life around this was hearty. Longhouses hummed with kitchen talk, the air heavy with the clink of knives and the scent of barley. Cooks, tending fires, grumbled about supplies, their voices gruff, the air warm with the bubble of pots and the effort of feeding all. Families, sharing bread, whispered about that bad stew, the air thick with the smell of smoke and the murmur of add more. Fish. The community loved the meal, snickering over mead about a cook's lumpy broth, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a bowl. Stew was a comfort, and as the fire fades, let's shift to omen checks, where signs got spooky. Picture yourself in an Icelandic longhouse, 1000 CE, the air heavy with the scent of wool, smoke, and the faint whiff of a seer's sweaty cloak. You're watching the fire's sparks, hoping they don't spell doom for tomorrow. The air's buzzing with the crackle of logs, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of good omens. The sagas of Icelanders note Vikings reading signs like flames or dreams at night. Let's slip into this spooky ritual, letting the flicker of flames, the whiff of ash, and their nervous divining make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Omens, per sagas, guided sleep with sparks or winds foretelling fate. A bad sign might mean stay awake, the air thick with the drone of whispers and the smell of smoke. You'd probably mutter, hope those sparks aren't bad news. Bedtime was omen time, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of good signs. Life around this was eerie. Longhouses hummed with omen talk, the air heavy with the clink of amulets and the scent of wax. Seers, reading signs, grumbled about fate, their voices low, the air warm with the chant of prayers and the effort of pleasing gods. Families, sharing mead, whispered about that bad spark, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of hope it's fine. The community loved the mystery, snickering over bread about a seer's wrong sign, the air thick with fumes, and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a prophecy. Omens were a scare, and as the longhouse fades, let's shift to weapon checks, where blades got ready. Imagine huddling in a Norwegian farmstead, 850 CE, the air heavy with the scent of iron, oil, and the faint whiff of a Viking's rusty axe. You're sharpening your blade before bed, hoping it's ready for a sudden raid. The air's buzzing with the scrape of whetstones, the rustle of furs, and the murmur of sharp enough. The sagas of Icelanders note Vikings maintaining weapons nightly in winter. Let's dive into this metallic fuss, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of oil, and their blade-sharpening grumbles make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Weapon checks per sagas were a bedtime ritual, with swords and axes honed for defense. A dull blade could mean danger, the air thick with the drone of scraping and the smell of oil. You'd probably mutter, hope this axe cuts tomorrow. Bedtime was prep time, the air tense with the clink of metal and the hope of readiness. Life around this was tense. Farmsteads hummed with weapon talk, the air heavy with the clink of tools and the scent of iron. Warriors, sharpening blades, grumbled about raids, their voices gruff, the air warm with the scrape of stones and the effort of staying ready. Families sharing bread whispered about that dull axe, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of sharpen it right. Community loved the routine, snickering over Mead about a Viking's blunt blade, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a whetstone. Weapons were a chore, and as the farmstead fades, let's shift to animal checks, where livestock got cozy. Picture yourself in a Swedish longhouse, 950 CE, the air heavy with the scent of straw, weave, and the faint whiff of a cow's damp hide. You're checking the livestock before bed, hoping the goats don't freeze or wander off. The air's buzzing with the clink of bells, the rustle of hay, and the murmur of stay put. Archaeological finds from Circa show animals housed near longhouses for winter warmth. Let's wander into this pastoral fuss, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of straw, and their animal grumbles make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Livestock, per archaeological evidence, were checked nightly to ensure they survived winter. A loose goat could mean loss, the air thick with the drone of moose and the smell of hay. You'd probably mutter, "Hope that cow stays warm." Bedtime was animal time, the air tense with the rustle of straw and the hope of a full barn. Life around this was busy. Longhouses hummed with animal talk, the air heavy with the clink of buckets and the scent of wool. Farmers, securing pens, grumbled about strays, their voices gruff, the air warm with the rustle of hay and the effort of tending livestock. Neighbors, sharing mead, whispered about that rogue goat, the air thick with the smell of bread and the murmur of tie it tight. The community loved the routine, snickering over stew about a cow's barn escape, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when sleep's a moo. Animals were a chore, and as the longhouse fades, let's wrap up with a final reflection, tying these secrets together with a smirk. When you think about Viking winter nights, it's tempting to picture something utterly alien to our modern routines, people huddled in smoky longhouses, muttering prayers to Thor while sharpening axes and carving runes to keep undead Draugr away. Yet when you look more closely, the divide between their lives and ours begins to blur, because at the core, the needs and anxieties they carried into the dark are the same as ours today. Take the hearth fire, for example. To the Viking household, it was more than warmth. It was life insurance. A poorly tended fire meant frostbite or death, so keeping it alive was a nightly ritual infused with worry. Fast forward to us fumbling with thermostats, electric heaters, or smart home apps. We still obsess over temperature, fussing about whether the room is too cold, too hot, or too expensive to heat. The details differ, but the psychology is identical. Human beings crave stable warmth as reassurance against the night. The runes carved into door frames to keep Draugr at bay have their own echoes in today's world, too. Where a Viking farmer might chisel alges for protection, we punch in a passcode, double-lock the door, or check the little glowing red light of the security camera before bed. These are our charms, our wards against intrusion, our proof that the boundaries of home are guarded. And when something goes wrong, when a lock jams or the Wi-Fi camera cuts out, we feel the same unease as a Viking might if his rune cracked. that the shield between us and the lurking unknown has failed. The skald telling stories by the fire was a human answer to dread and boredom alike, and in that we see ourselves clearly. Today we stream Netflix, scroll endlessly on phones, or put on a sleep podcast like Calm, Boring, Sleepy History. The purpose is the same: distraction, comfort, and shared experience to crowd out the worries of the night. Just as sagas of Thor or Odin bound the Viking household together in laughter or awe, binge watching a show or listening to an audiobook lets us synchronize our minds with a rhythm that dulls anxiety and lulls us toward rest. The mead horn raised in toast before sleep, honoring gods and ancestors, looks very different on the surface from our nighttime rituals, yet the structure remains intact. A Viking elder blessing the hall with honey wine echoes and our chamomile teas, lavender sprays, cheers over late-night drinks, or even gratitude journals. These small acts frame the night with meaning, transforming a biological act of sleep into a spiritual or social event. The fleas in Viking bedding are not something most of us worry about, though we do still complain about restless mattresses, hot sheets, or the whirring noise of a neighbor's AC. Our fleas may be bed bugs in a city apartment or the stiffness of an IKEA frame, but the complaint is timeless. Beds are never as perfect as you want them to be, and the night magnifies every discomfort. The nightly prayers to Thor or Freyr, murmured to protect against trolls or bad fortune, find their analogues in our whispered routines of intention. Some of us pray to the same gods our ancestors did, others to different deities, while many adopt secular equivalents, affirmations, meditation apps, or the simple act of whispering it's going to be okay to ourselves before drifting off. The Vikings' faith that divine ears were listening is not so far from our reliance on the idea that mindfulness, positivity, or a sleep app can shield us from chaos. Food preparation before bed also remains oddly continuous. A Viking housewife stirring barley stew so it lasts till morning is not unlike someone meal prepping overnight oats, setting the slow cooker, or leaving pizza dough to rise. We too treat food as continuity, a bridge from night into day, a way of reassuring ourselves that tomorrow will start with sustenance already secured. Omen reading, the Viking habit of interpreting sparks, dreams, or strange noises, sounds superstitious, but scroll through modern Twitter feeds or TikTok astrology accounts, and you'll find people still consulting signs before bed. We interpret tomorrow through forecasts, horoscopes, and health trackers, hoping that the numbers or symbols will reduce uncertainty. Their seer muttered about sparks. Ours pushes app notifications about REM cycles. Both reveal a hunger for patterns and chaos. Weapon checks before sleep seem uniquely Viking, yet the instinct is alive in subtler form. With a sharpened axes, we check pepper spray in a purse, test the deadbolt, or place a phone within arm's reach as a lifeline to emergency services. Even the way some people obsessively refresh security systems or keep a bat near the bed is a direct echo of Norsemen muttering, "Is the axe sharp enough?" before blowing out the lamp. Livestock checks also resonate, albeit through pets and dependents. A Viking farmer tucking in goats and cows before bed is mirrored in us, ensuring cats are inside, dogs are walked, aquariums bubbled, or even children comforted before lights out. The principal care for the vulnerable before sleeping is one of the most enduring cross-temporal habits. and in the community gossip about whose fire died too early, whose rune was crooked, or whose stew turned thin. We glimpse the same human delight in comparing routines we find today in social media chatter, mommy blogs, or late-night group texts about baby sleep schedules. Beneath the smoke and sagas, Viking nights were about smoothing uncertainty through shared ritual. Beneath the LED glow and hum of appliances, ours are too. In some ways, modern life has amplified Viking patterns. The skald story reached only one hall. Our stories now reach millions through headphones and screens. Their runes carved once in wood. Ours are endless digital passwords rewritten across countless accounts. Their omens flickered in firelight. Ours appear as trending news or health metrics glowing at two emitting horn, raised to Uden, warmed a dozen throats. Our bedtime drinks are commodified rituals sold in supermarket aisles with promises of wellness. But if you strip away technology, what remains is the same skeleton. Warmth, safety, story, food, faith, weapons, animals. We still fight the dark with the tools at hand, layering the night with meaning to make it survivable. Even our modern sleep struggles insomnia, anxiety. Doom scrolling would not surprise a Viking farmer kept awake by a drafty roof, a hungry goat, or the fear that his neighbor's dog or tale might come true. In the end, Viking winter nights and our own are two variations on a single theme. Humanity trying to shrink the vastness of darkness into something small enough to rest within. Their furs are our duvets, their skalds are our podcasts, their rune wards our passwords, their omens are forecasts, their axes are security systems. What changes is not the impulse, but the medium. And perhaps the most comforting realization of all is that in 1,000 years, when people look back at us, they will recognize their own nightly habits in ours, just as we see our reflection in the smoky shadows of a Norse longhouse. As the hum of the Viking winter fades, the crackle of fires, the rustle of furs, the scent of mead and slightly burnt stew, let your mind flop into the quiet like a Viking after a long night of tailies. We've wandered through the quiet secrets of Viking winter nights, from fire tending to animal checks, each a testament to their hardy, superstitious world. Their nights were a whirlwind of runes, toasts, and hope that Draugr stays away. Yet they were also a place where rituals brought warmth to the cold. Picture yourself now, tucked into a soft bed, the air still and the clamor of their longhouse far away, their wary whispers a distant chuckle. These Vikings, tough and fussy, remind us that even in history's chilliest corners, people were gloriously, messily human. Let the details slip away, like a lamp flickering out in a smoky longhouse. The crackling hearths, the creaky doors, the taste of mead and spirit-soaked air, they fade into the background, leaving only the peace of this moment and a lingering smirk. You've journeyed through a world where winter nights were a cozy battle, its Vikings' earnest prayers and sharpened blades keeping its story alive. Now it's time to rest, to let go of the ancient antics and sink into calm. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and let the gentle absurdity of history lull you into sleep, safe in the silliness of now.